So there you have it, folks. My Licorice is alive with Antonio Carlos Jobim's bossa classic Triste, composed by Jobim in 1966. In the famous Sunset Marquis Hotel right here in the land of La Triste was first recorded as an instrumental by Jobim, and then a year later for its intended artist, none other than the chairman of the board, Frank Sinatra. But my fave instrumental version is by the modern master of the Licorice, none other than Buddy DeFranco on his Live from Buenos Aires album. Really cool. Check it out. So welcome, friends, subscribers, and countrymen to another installment of Rebel Without Applause, coming to you from my movie studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly under the sign, overlooking the enchanted land of law. And as always, I'm doing my best to explore the netherworld of my brain and hopefully, just maybe, shed a little light into yours. And gee whiz, Thanksgiving is right around the corner. No, it's not around the corner. It's on the same frigging street. In fact, it is tomorrow. And with that comes the onslaught, the holy hell of the holiday season. First, it's Black Friday, which sounds like the title to a shitty horror movie. Well, maybe that's actually what it is, a horror movie, only we're all in it. Millions upon millions of deal-starved shoppers storming the malls in search of that most sought-after American prize, and that is, a discount. Yes, the Christmas season is upon us. Lights on the streets, sleigh bells and snowballs, the same terrible and wonderful songs, all celebrating the birth of that most wonderful of Jewish boys, Jesus H. Christ. And by the way, I never know what the H stands for, but whatever. And who knew that Jesus H. Christ would become the greatest marketing tool in human history? A poster boy for capitalism and consumerism and a ton of other isms. Jesus H. Christ and the GDP. Some economists or anthropologists should write a paper about that, but it won't be me. Okay, where are we? The SoCal fire season is about to yield to our annual monsoon season. No more windswept conflagration. Now it's time for rain and mud. Swollen rivers that for 9 months lay dry will morph into raging brown torrents that churn their way across miles of gutterized cityscape before they tumble into the mighty Pacific. The spectacle, the cycle of life and all its many manifestations. So Thanksgiving is upon us. And here's a little backstory. The holiday was written into law by none other than Abraham Lincoln back in 1863, right after the bloodiest summer in American history. That was the summer of Gettysburg and Vicksburg and Chickamauga, when tens of thousands of Confederate and Union soldiers marched willingly, even joyously, to their deaths. The Confederates, mostly poor, uneducated white boys from the backwoods, marched in defense of a handful of oligarchs who owned black people. And the Union boys marched because they got drafted or hated their wives or were abolitionists or were just fucking bored. Anyway, with all these boys coming back in wooden boxes, Lincoln decided that it would be a good time for a holiday that everybody could celebrate, Confederate and Union, white and black, native and immigrant. So he declared one. Ostensibly, Thanksgiving was created to honor that first harvest in Massachusetts when the Pilgrims, who were starving, got bailed out by their indigenous neighbors with some turkeys and corn, and I think sweet potatoes. I don't recall what was on the original menu exactly, but that's basically the gist of it, all of which kept those European immigrant white folk from starving to death in the New World. And in exchange for this act of kindness, those European white people stole the land from their indigenous neighbors and did their darnest over the following centuries to wipe them off the face of the earth. Today we call it ethnic cleansing or genocide, but back then they called it adventure or wholesome fun. As a matter of fact, the movie industry made millions memorializing this wholesome fun in a genre we call Westerns. But that's another story. Either way, for Lincoln, in that bloody summer of 1863, it was a good time for a holiday. So Honest Abe declared it, and this week we celebrate it. Yahoo! Okay, where am I? I think it's time for a little personal update for my podcasting fans. Right now, my private life is so private, I don't even know about it. My Thumb, though, has been busy on the dating apps as of late, but notwithstanding my best efforts, it looks like I'll be hurtling headlong into another holiday season dead, solid, single. Oh well, I'm used to that. I probably should shut my dating app thumb down for now till at least after Valentine's Day, which otherwise is known as Relationship Tax Day. That way, I can save a ton of money on those first date, last date evenings. I won't overspend on obligatory gifts and expensive holiday dinners at she farm-to-table restaurants with some newly discovered insignificant other. Instead, I can just get into my Starship Subaru and just be a pickup artist for Uber. I'll orbit the Uberverse and rake some cash off those rain-slicked city streets. Maybe I'll even perform some random act of human kindness. Rack up some good karma points and give out cheap plastic ponchos to my homeless neighbors under the freeway overpasses right here in the heart of the Holly. And then I'll spit out my podcasts. And when the weather clears and the waves come in, I'll tool up the coast for some surf, which I did this weekend. Have to say, I scored some nice rides up at a spot called County Line because the spot straddles the boundary between Los Angeles and Ventura counties, after which I gleefully consumed a pound of Elam shrimp across the highway at Neptune's Net, which is a big-time hang for the weekend biker crowd. For some reason, the surfers don't go there. I don't know why, maybe because it's expensive. Anyway, it's the time of the season, as the song says, where County Line, or County as the locals call it, becomes a reliable vector for swell energy originating out of the upper reaches of the North Pacific. Winter storms lash a wide swath of ocean around the Kamchatka Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands, and the wind energy gets absorbed into swell energy and then organizes itself across the ocean until it makes landfall in the form of bitchin waves along the north-facing Hawaiian and Cali coasts. By the way, bitchin is a long-forgotten word used primarily by 1970s-era valley boys like myself to describe a really good-looking girl, or anything cool for that matter, like, oh, Lisa Anderson is so bitchin', or the 65 Mustang or the 72 Cutlass are bitchin' cars. Sometime in the early 80s, the word bitchin' was officially retired, but I still use it. And I know it shows my age, but bitchin' is a bitchin' word. It's at once a little bit nasty and at the same time has a kind of suburban surfer sort of poetry to it. When you say that word, bitchin', I see blonde hair and freckles. I see miniskirts and knee socks. I see sun and sand and sea and tons of sex I never had, but I wish I did. Gee whiz. The more I think about it, the more I miss that word. So starting at this moment in this podcast, I'm going to try and bring it back. Bitchin' is a way better word than, let's say, groovy. Groovy feels arcane and dated. And groovy has deservedly been discarded and forgotten, but bitchin', it still has the ring of truth to it. As a matter of personal preference, I still prefer the word bitchin' to, let's say, the word dope. I'm hearing that a lot lately. Whoa, that song is dope, or LeBron and the Lakers are dope. I don't know. I say let's ditch dope and bring back bitchin'. And if you are, by the way, fortunate to have a bitchin' babe for like a girlfriend or a wife, actually, I don't know if a wife can qualify as bitchin', but still, if you do have a bitchin' babe in your life, do not, folks, I repeat, do not let her go. I've had just a few bitchin' babes in my life, and I still think of them every day. Okay, I lost my train of thought again. That's what happens when I podcast. Well, actually not. It's really all part of the illusion of spontaneity. The point is, I want you to think that I'm just rattling this stuff off the top of my head, but I'm not. I write it out, then I rewrite it, then I perform it, and then I edit it. Okay, I outed myself. The illusion is gone. Please, folks, don't tell anybody. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes, winter surf. Suffice to say, the big bombs are on their way. That means County and C Street and Rincon come alive, while my home break, Surfrider Beach in Malibu, goes into a kind of hibernation. Unless, of course, the energy peels out of a more westerly direction, like, say, Japan, then the boo will show, and magic carpet rides of joy by the pier are to be had by one and all, provided you're a regular and not a kook. And if you want more info, folks, on kooks and regulars, I recommend you check out episode number 25 from my podcast of the very same title, Kooks and Regulars. But otherwise, weekend warrior that I am, I will be wave hunting along those fun north-facing breaks. What else? I did my civic duty last week and watched the impeachment hearings. Final impressions are this. Why is it that the aides sitting behind the Republican congressmen are always big, fat, humongous white guys that look like concentration camp guards? Okay, I mean, I know that maybe that's not a fair thing to say. Sorry, it's a cheap shot. But still, they look like Colonel Klink and Hogan's Heroes. And if you don't know who he is or was or whatever, I refer you to YouTube. But watching these hearings, it's so easy to get lost in the details. In this meeting, this one said that. In that meeting, that one said this. Sometimes it all gets a little confusing. The casual observer can really get lost in the weeds. But if you power up your drone and get up, 1,000 feet or so, a clear picture of the whole Mishigas emerges. And by the way, Mishigas is a Yiddish word that means like whole confusing mess or something to that effect. It's actually an older word than bitchin, coming from Eastern Europe, but that's another story. Anyway, looking down from my drone, this much is clear. The PVP, that's Putin's vice president, is doing the business of you-know-who, Big Bad Vlad. Now, Big Bad Vlad up there in cold, cold Moscow wants some warm Ukrainian cheese. And for his part, the PVP wants 4 more years of rent-free federal housing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The PVP was nearly evicted from his rent-free federal housing by facts that emerged from a 2-year investigation that was offered up by just the facts, ma'am. By that I mean Mr. No-Nonsense, No-Humor Robert Mueller. Basically, what happened, as revealed by Mueller, was that, metaphorically, the PVP got caught speeding, going, as I said, for the purpose of metaphor, 65 in a 25-mile-per-hour school zone. And basically, Mueller, the traffic cop, pulled the PVP over, and instead of writing a ticket somehow, despite the facts, just the facts, ma'am, Mueller gave the PVP a pass and a mild warning. Not even a slap on the wrist. Now, if a cop gives me a break for speeding, guess what I do? I take a deep breath, wipe the sweat off my brow, and say in my most humble voice, "Thank you, officer." And then I slow the fuck down. But the PVP is an altogether different breed of cat. What did he do? He turned the ignition, revved his motor, spun his tires, and hauled fucking ass back onto the lane, this time at around 85 miles per hour in the very same 25 mile per hour school zone. By that I mean after nearly getting busted for conspiring with Big Bad Vlad to steal the last election, he set out on the day after the Mueller hearings to coerce the Ukrainians to corrupt the next election. How? By getting slime on the OVP, Obama's vice president. If the PVP could just get a little Ukrainian slime on the OVP, fake slime or real slime, and the truth is he would need fake slime because, frankly, there was no real slime. Either way, the PVP would have the ammo he needed to sink his perceived chief rival, the OVP, before he left the dock. Talk about balls. Talk about pathological. It's like right out of Crime and Punishment. He makes Raskolnikov look like, well, I don't know what Raskolnikov looks like, but he makes Nixon look like a choir boy. He makes Teapot Dome look like a tempest in a teapot. And if you don't know about Teapot Dome, look up Warren Harding. Oh, well, I'm ranting. Let's just leave it at this. For the next few days, forget about it. Get some turkey. Watch some football, even though we know it causes brain damage to those who play and even those who watch it. But whatever, we're all damaged. Just stick your head in the sand or the mud for the next few days. Don't think about it. And whatever you do, try to avoid unpleasant relatives. And until the next time, keep it absolutely, verifiably in sync and bitchin.